What's up, bros? It's Taylor again, finally back. So I'm back this week, and I'm tired after another week of school, and the same old thing. Anyways, I am still figuring out all this collaboration channel stuff, but I'm pretty sure the first topic is how I knew I was trans, so that's what I'm going with. As I think I said in my last video, I've been trans identified for about 5 or 6 years, but there was a lot of discovery before that when I was younger. First figuring out like that trans people even exist was the first step for me. Like there were little things as a child, I didn't fit in generally into either the male or female category, but it wasn't like as a kid I was just like, I'm trans, because I didn't know what it was, and, you know, I didn't even know that it was possible, and once I learned that, you'd think I would be really happy, but I was actually pretty terrified, because I didn't, I'm pretty sure I'm quoting myself word for word, but I didn't want to be trans, and it was a scary thing, but I didn't identify straight away. Like, it was probably over a year before I kind of accepted my fate, so to speak. I didn't want to hop on immediately to the whole, like, you know, identification thing, I didn't want to tell people or even myself that I was trans too soon, like, because I didn't want to look stupid later, kind of, and I found that when you're researching such things as, how do you know if you're trans? I mean, that comes up on Google or whatever, but there aren't really any clear information or guides to help you. So it was kind of difficult, and eventually I kind of came up with ways to help myself, sort of philosophical thinking. Sort of like, I would think things like, what if for the rest of my life I were a girl, How would that make me feel? And for me, that was just unthinkable. I couldn't imagine, living and dying as a female because I'm not. And then at that point you realize just how much, you've always thought that someday you'll just suddenly become a guy, you'll just suddenly be there. And without thinking about transition and stuff, like, I've almost counted on it. And maybe that's kind of a symptom, so to speak, of being trans, but that was my experience. And as I went through gender therapy, like, the different facets of my trans personality, like my therapist Robin, she kind of knew how to analyze those things, and that starting gender therapy was when a lot of different, childhood things kind of added up, so to speak. And I still, it's hard to tell, and I still don't entirely know where that boundary is between just being a tomboyish, naive child and being trans, lies. So it's kind of complex, and it's as much as you hate to hear it when you're asking someone that question, and as much as you'll hear it time and time again, it really is true that only you can know if you're trans, and that's just the way it is. But that doesn't mean that there aren't things that can help you. Hello? My sister says hi. The other thing that I find a lot to be very indicative of being trans too is when you realize just how persistent your feelings are. And that was a big part of identifying for me too, was realizing the sheer amount of time, all those years where I couldn't get it out of my head and I called myself, trans or possibly trans. And it's really a profound thing. It's not a moment, it's not a phase, it's not just sort of an inkling. It's something that you can't stop thinking about. Excuse me. It's it's just really, it's a part of who you are, and if you think about your gender and that state every day for quite a long time, then you should probably seriously consider the possibility, because it's a tough pill to swallow and it really never goes down. I mean, things get easier, like lately, with me starting to pass and, I'm loving testosterone. I don't think about gender as much because it's getting easier, I feel like I'm sort of on a downhill. I mean, I don't know if it ever does go really completely downhill or if you ever really honestly get to the bottom, but you know, things are getting better and I'm not thinking about it as much because I'm doing what I have to do and my mind is satisfied in knowing that. But when your mind knows that you're not doing, what it feels like you need, it's not an easy feeling to just swallow, and I really feel bad for the people that have to. That's my thoughts as far as knowing you're trans and how I knew, and that's all I can really think of for now. Hopefully the video turns out to be a decent length, and I will see you next week